Welcome to the Ben Mulroney Show. Thanks so much for joining us. It's Wednesday, which means we check in with our This Week in Politics panel on Hump Day. And today, that panel is made up of Tom Parkin, principal at Impact Strategies, as well as Anthony Koch, managing principal at AK Strategies, and former national campaign spokesperson for Pierre Poilievre. Happy Wednesday, guys.
Hey there.
Happy Wednesday.
Okay, I want to get, Anthony, we're going to start with you. How do you see this? You know, we were told a few weeks ago by the Trump administration that we needed to press pause on the digital services tax because that was going to be a sticking point in our ongoing talks for a new security and trade arrangement with the United States. We listened to them. We capitulated. We gave them what they wanted. Explain to me how that makes sense to them. But I wake up today to hear that Donald Trump has woken up and decided that copper is an issue for him, and he wants to throw a 50% tariff on our copper. And not for nothing, Canada accounted for 70% of the refined copper imports into the United States, second only to Chile. So tell me how that works.
So I'll tell you how it works. It's that the president now has established a precedent that he can single out specific issues and say, you got to do something about this or all negotiations are shut down. And then he's going to wait and see what our response is. One day it's going to be the DST, the next it's going to be copper, the day after it's going to be supply management, and the list is going to go on and on and on until Canadians set a red line. Because at the end of the day, from the president's perspective, if you keep saying change this or I'm out and you keep changing things, he's going to say, great, well, I'm going to keep naming things for you to change until I get absolutely everything that I want. So I think we were assuming that a softer touch would get us a little bit of goodwill here. I understand why, but it certainly does not appear. Maybe there's some stuff going on behind closed doors, but at least publicly, it certainly does not seem to be the case.
Well, and that's the thing. I was pretty vociferous on this show, Tom, about how we gave up everything on the digital services tax and didn't get anything in response. A friend of mine said, "Yeah, but we don't know. For all we know, this might have tempered him." On like we may have built out some sort of agreement that where he's just going to be a little quieter on what he's asking for in terms of supply management. So I said, okay, I'll take a wait and see approach. But now I see this today and I realize, no, he really is a guy who views every interaction he has as a zero sum game. There has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. There's no such thing as a win-win for him.
It might actually even be worse than that, Ben, because he may not even be looking for an end. He's just looking for continual destabilization. So, if you just keep introducing, X factors into the negotiations, they never conclude and you continue on with the status quo, which is turmoil, which is bad for us as Canadians, for Canadian investors, for Canadian workers, and makes the preference American. Compared to the UE, the date for the 90 days that Donald Trump gave as a breather to the EU and the rest of the world passed. He sent some kind of snotty and ill-written form letters to South Korea and Japan, telling them what they were going to get, and they kind of shrugged. And the EU just said, actually, EU said a week ago, we're not going to meet that deadline. We're not going to meet that negotiating deadline. And what happened to them? Nothing.
Yeah.
Just passed on. So I don't play the game. He's not that kind of guy. You gotta just play the game of I'm not playing that game.
Yeah. So Anthony, I mean, there is still and will remain for a significant amount of time a certain type of person who, no matter what evidence is presented to them, that is evidence that Mark Carney is doing the right thing and he is the right guy for this moment. But stuff like this shows me that there isn't necessarily a right guy for this moment. It doesn't matter who we would have elected. We would have gotten this from Donald Trump.
Well, here's the thing, man. You can be the best negotiator in the world. If you have a poor hand, you have a poor hand, right? And this is the thing that at the end of the day, the United States is far larger than us. We rely on them for trade far more than they rely on us. So we were always going to be in an inferior negotiating position. That doesn't mean that there's not things that, like, for example, like you said, 70% of copper exports into the United States, or imports, I should say, come from Canada. So this would also hurt the United States as well, and specific industries disproportionately compared to other ones. But at the end of the day, if there's one lesson I could give for everybody listening, it's that in life, you need to be comfortable with a certain amount of conflict. I'm guilty of this too. I guess you could call me Trumpian to some extent. When I interact with people that I know are extraordinarily conflict averse, you know what I want? I turn up the temperature ever so slightly and I watch them cave over and over and over again. But then every once in a while you come across somebody who says, you want to dance, buddy? Let's dance. And all of a sudden the conversation is very different from the kinds of conversations I have with that other group of people. And I think that's sort of the situation that we find ourselves in right now. So I guess, to borrow phraseology, we got to put our elbows up and get used to a little bit of a rumble and tumble. You know what I'm saying?
Tom, jump in.
Look, Ben, at what happened with steel, right? We got a new round of steel tariffs put on Canadian steel, and our government didn't do anything immediately. It waited for a month until, was it just Monday? Was it Monday of this week where there was an announcement that there would be steel imports? No, steel tariffs, retaliatory tariffs for Canada. So just, and in the meantime, since the very first day that Trump announced his increase in tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, the industry owners and the industry workers said, we need retaliatory tariffs immediately. Yeah. Immediately. Carney delayed. Immediately, because American steel is still priced to be able to access the Canadian market and be used for Canadian jobs. But Canadian steel it's just priced out of the market in the United States with a 50% tariff. So we're just letting steel come into our country for nothing.
Yeah.
So, when you take a weak approach like that, why not copper? Why not? I just think, at some point we got to stand up for ourselves, draw the lines, and be a little bit more like you and say, you know what? We got a lot of good stuff here in Canada, and it's going to be a little disconcerting for us, but we can find other partners who are more reasonable and long-term and do think in terms of win-win.
Yeah, and how much of this? I mean, it seems to me every time we hear Donald Trump complain about Canada and he decides that the antidote is going to be some sort of tariff, do you think that this brings Canadians closer together, Tom, when it comes to this building this one Canadian economy? Do you think that those who, because, and by the way, that sentiment is going to come together and it's going to break apart and come together and break apart every day. Like the winds will blow and people will change their opinions on that. But it seems to me when he speaks like that, it brings us closer together and makes it more likely that we will actually achieve those goals that Mark Carney has set for us.
Yeah, it depends how it's done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance in this, but in general, I think your point is 100% correct. And again, just to look at the UE experience, the EU experience, a lot of we've seen the American dollar take a tumble and the euro go up. Well, what is that saying? That's big institutional investors moving away from the United States and into Europe. And so they are figuring out, well, do we really have the kind of financial infrastructure, architecture that the United States does? And the answer is no, they don't. So if we want to create a finance capital, and London is gone because London did the stupid Brexit thing, if we want to make Europe into a finance capital and really attract investment and ditch New York, ditch Trump, ditch the United States, we're going to have to do some things. So they're talking about further integration. We're talking about how do we create an internal market where if you're in Quebec or BC or Ontario or Alberta, you can sell your goods anywhere in the country. That makes a lot of sense. But the as we did see it in a report, the margin on that is not huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to have other strategies as well as just kind of making sure that there are limited barriers to internal trade and purchasing.
Anthony, the last word is
done.
Yeah, Anthony, last word to you on this one.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. The provinces are a nasty bunch. We have a country where we're centralized where we should be decentralized and decentralized where we should be centralized. There are far too many special interest groups and regulatory woo-ha between provinces. I want us to have a free trade agreement. It's so silly that we're talking about a free trade agreement amongst our provinces, but I'm telling you, based on my experience in politics, I'll believe it when I see it. Right now, I see nothing, so I believe nothing.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you got to remember, the Liberals won the election, but there are two parties that really lost. The Conservatives have been looking inward. They're going to have a leadership review, and now it looks like the NDP are going to do that as well. There's also somebody who's put their name forth to be the next leader, and I got something to say about this guy. Don't go anywhere. This is the Ben Mulroney Show. Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show, and welcome back to Tom Parkin and Anthony Koch for This Week in Politics, our midweek panel. So we know that the Conservatives did not do what they set out to do in the last election, which was win, and therefore it triggered a leadership review and a postmortem and a long walk in the snow to figure out what to do next. And I'm surprised it has taken the NDP this long, given the fact that they had their worst showing in a federal election in their 60-year existence. But here we are. A lawyer has been brought in to sort of do a review. He was former candidate as well, to do a review on how they lost 17 seats in official party status. Let's go back to a moment during the election that I think encapsulated sort of the problems that they were encountering. This is Jagmeet Singh sort of trying to get the crowd going.
I want the floor to shake, okay? When the chorus comes, we're all going to jump together. Get ready, everybody. We're going to show them that we're ready. We're ready to fight. We're ready to win. Are you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we'll end it there. Let's also, for those who are only listening on radio, this was done, I believe, right next to him or 2 people over from him was a woman in a wheelchair. So getting people to jump was interesting. And you could hear that there weren't a lot of people in the room. Tom, I'll ask you first. A lot of us who are not inside the NDP tent would humbly suggest that in doing a postmortem of the election failures and weaknesses, the NDP probably have to go back and look at more than just the election campaign itself, but the months, if not years, that led up to the election campaign. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are definitely things that could be controlled and could not be controlled, but that also comes after the idea of certain decisions having been made. It's like, like a treeing diagram. Once you've made certain decisions, then the campaign itself unfolds, and you only have certain doors open to you. And as it turned out, there were very few. The way that Mark Carney played his hand, which turns out to have been quite dishonest, I would say, but that's a side comment. The big question in that branching tree really goes back, I think, to September, October, when the New Democrats were slightly ahead in several polls of the Liberals. And the tension here was minority, bring them down. Poilievre becomes prime minister in an election that follows. The dental program probably gets trashed. The pharmacare program probably gets trashed. But the New Democrats have a very good chance of becoming official opposition. Now, this is a very, very key point about the New Democrats' tolerance, their tolerance for risk, and their tolerance for the blowback of, you made Pierre Poilievre the prime minister, and he took away all the good stuff that you New Democrats got out of the Liberals. But the flip side of that argument is, yeah, but we're official opposition, and when Pierre goes down, we're going to be the ones who take over.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have no path as the third. So this really is a key debate that has to be considered about what is the party's tolerance for making a move like that.
Yeah.
That's a very, very hard decision for a bunch of people who truly, I think, do care about people, being able to get their teeth done.
Yeah.
To see that taken away by Pierre Poilievre would be painful. Now, as it turns out, you kind of had to cave on that, but that came later. That was down the decision tree. Yeah.
Anthony, it behooves people on the right to have a strong NDP when it comes time to election time. The stronger they are, they typically they'll take votes away from the Liberals, which then improves the lot for Conservatives. So a lot of people on the right should be hoping that these guys figure it out. How likely do you think it is that they do hit the nail on the head and they do figure out what went wrong?
So listen, Ben, I was the director of communications for the historic British Columbia Conservative election. And as you know, out there, the main left wing, the BC NDP, and I got to say, they're a professional outfit and they're really good at politics for the most part. I don't agree with their policies, but the actual business of winning elections, I know what they're doing. The federal NDP is the most piss-poor managed party in the country. It's not even close. These guys couldn't know how to win if it hit them in the face. I think NDPers at the federal level get more excited about losing elections and getting obliterated than conservatives do get excited about winning them. It's amazing. It's like a party. We got 7 seats, lost official party status, and got completely torched. Woohoo! Let's jump up and down. It's amazing to watch. But I'll say I'm not in the business of giving free political advice. I charge a pretty penny for it, but I'm trying to be a better Jew. So here's my tzedakah. Here's my tzedakah for the day to all to all the dippers out there. Okay, your enemy is the Liberal Party of Canada. Always, always. Every single second that you spend going after the Conservatives, You want to talk about moral victories? Moral victories in politics are for losers. I hate to break it to everybody, including people on my side of the aisle. Your voter pool, the people you're trying to get to become New Democrats, vote 80% for the Liberal Party of Canada. That is where you should focus your energy. That is what Jack Layton always understood. That's why he was so successful. And I'll say, if you can't do well, yes, there was some Donald Trump factor, of course, too. But if the NDP cannot do well against an international banker, corporate head who used to work for Goldman Sachs, bonne chance against any other opponent.
Well, and I want to go back to Tom for this next part because, you know, the one part is figuring out why you lost. And then the next part is answering those questions with a leader who can demonstrate that you know why you lost. And I am now I'm looking at the website of a man by the name of Yves Engler, who says why I'm running for the leadership of the NDP. And he has been put forth by the NDP Socialist Caucus to run. Now, here's what I know about Yves Engler, because I've had one interaction with him in my life. It was in Montreal at a private event where Canada Post was honoring my father with a stamp. He snuck in and was a rabble-rouser with his cell phone, coming up to people asking them about their support of the Israeli genocide. When I heard of this happening, I stole his phone out of his hand, I threw it to the other side of the room, and I called him every expletive that I could. This, to me, this is, if they go down the route of this guy, this will, to me, demonstrate that they're not getting it. I'm looking at Tom, I'm looking at why he says he's running. The first 1,000 words do not mention Canadian workers, working conditions, pharmacare. Right. Everything is about Israel and mass slaughter. And pick the buzzword that you want: anti-imperialism, decolonialism, unlearning white privilege, all that stuff. This guy,
love it.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. So there we go. So
and there's a lot of that and a lot of eco-socialism piece in there.
Yeah, but
it's, well, you know, I mean, what's his logo?
It looks like a Soviet era.
What is it?
Poster.
It's a friggin' red flag.
Yeah. But to me, activists,
that's kind of sarcastic.
But like
that's kind of ironic in this era, because when we talk about red flags now, we're meaning like warning, right? Like, don't date this guy; he's a weirdo. But really, what he means by it is, something a little different.
Yeah, but and look, it's a Big Ten party.
He was a strange guy.
Strange
guy.
But he's also, generally speaking, Tom, I don't believe that activists necessarily translate into good politicians. No. Because activists are scalpels, and politicians have to be people who bring people in. Activists can be very high and mighty, and they've got their beliefs, and they are going to fight for those beliefs. But sometimes you got to listen, and I don't know. He's a listener.
Well, look, you know, you mentioned it yourself, and this is just so key for me. Is you know where our Canadian
we're losing you a second, Tom. We're losing you. I'm going to go. I can't hear you very well, Tom. I'm going to cut you off, and I'm going to give just a minute. I'm going to give a minute to Anthony real quick.
Yeah, I mean, again, very, very interesting guy, Yves Engler. We have had similar experiences with him, Ben, and salute to you for how you treated him. But again, this just goes back to what is the NDP as a political formation? The fact that this guy actually probably has a pretty decent chance of winning too is just hilarious to me. Like, no talk, like you said, about workers' rights, about the difficulties that are being faced right now, and the huge cost of living crisis for workers, for all this sort of stuff. Again, good luck to the NDP. I always say, selfishly, as a conservative, I'd love for them to do more, have greater success. It's good for us at the end of the day at the ballot box. But it's just campus politics brought at the national stage, and all the weirdos that we all knew at the arts faculty back when we were studying at McGill or wherever are unleashed upon the world. Just put it into context. He is one of 3 people in 3 to get kicked out of Concordia for anti-Semitism. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how hard that is?
Guys, we're going to have to leave it there. Tom, I'm going to get you on the record with Yves the next time, but thank you both very much. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.